begin, welcome you to our second webinar, New Beginnings and Growth in the Creating a Circle of Support for Ourselves and Our Children series. My name is Robin Starch and my pronouns are she, her. If you wish to learn more about pronouns and the use of them, we have provided for you today a link in the chat. And with that, it'll help you kind of understand where and why and how that happens. With me today is Mel Anderson and Marcella Lenzilati. Oh, sorry, Marcella. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves a little bit more and then we'll get going. Hey, Mel.
Go ahead, Marcella.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. My name is Marcella. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program coordinator fellow for AmazeWorks, so I'm actually just here until the end of July. I'm doing a fellowship year, but I'm excited to be here and I've been learning a lot.
And my name is Melissa Anderson. You can call me Mel. We have two Melissas at AmazeWorks, so it gets a little confusing sometimes. And most people in my life call me Mel anyway. So I use she and her pronouns as well. And I'm Director of Curriculum and Instruction at AmazeWorks. I've been with AmazeWorks now for about a year and a half, and I come to this work after being a middle school classroom teacher for 15 years. I taught language arts and social studies in a variety of settings. And I'm excited to be here with you today at this second of our series of webinars. If you are joining us today and were not with us last week, welcome. And don't worry, you won't have had to have seen last week's webinar to make sense of what's being talked about today. We have some folks introducing themselves in the chat. Please continue to do that if you feel comfortable. Let us know where you're coming from today and something that made you laugh. Maybe I'll share something that made me laugh today. Was my dog. He makes me laugh almost every day. Some days more than others, but definitely this morning was very sprawled out on the bed, which made it really hard to get up this morning, but it was a pretty silly position and it made me laugh right away. So it was a good way to start the day. And we're gonna get started with an acknowledgement. So at AmazeWorks, we begin by acknowledging that we are bringing this webinar to you from St. Paul, Minnesota, which is on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people. A land acknowledgement is a formal recognition of the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Native Americans and their territories. By offering a land acknowledgement, we affirm and advocate for tribal sovereignty and commit to holding ourselves accountable to Indigenous peoples and nations. And we invite you to acknowledge the Indigenous people of the land on which you reside in the chat at this time. If you do not know who they are, we encourage you to find out more and talk about the history of colonization with your children. And if you want to discover more about land acknowledgements, please feel free to explore the website for the Native Governance Center, which will be provided in the chat.
The foundations for all of the work that we do at AmazeWorks is this anti-bias education model. Take a look at it as I read to you what Carol Brunson Day, the former but 20-year president of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, wrote about anti-bias education model. What if someone told you that you could contribute in a small but significant way to making the world a better place? Would you want to do it? Of course you would. When you use an anti-bias mindset, you are offered a chance to make the world fairer and more humane for everybody. She went on to say that, recalling as I do the sense of hope for change in society that filled the air during the 1960s, I feel the same now when I see how Louise Derman Sparks and Julie Olson Edwards are challenging us to do what we can do with this anti-bias education model. I have committed and energy and drive and hope to change so that there is a positive reflection and outlook for the case of equity. I love that statement that she said. I've seen her several times at conferences presenting, and she really does sum it up best. Today, I hope that you'll be here ready and leave by being responsive and take action with empathy and understanding, as it points out in the chart, and be responsive and understanding of these ideas that we share with you. We'll be discussing the development of healthy complex identities, and looking at both yourself and of your children and the youth and the others that you care for. And we're bringing these webinars to you in recognition that you are coming to this space with your own lived experiences. We hope to provide for you a windows and mirrors approach so that you can see yourself reflected in some of the things that we share and discuss. And hopefully you can be open with curiosity to discover new insights and perspectives. So for the people of color who join us and those with marginalized identities, we wish to provide you with an opportunity to know that there's solidarity and support to help you navigate some of the social and emotional work that can be done by all of us to strengthen equity and belonging for all. As white women, we feel it is important for each of us to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside here during this racial justice moment we are currently in. We at AmazeWorks seek to understand our place within that history and encourage others to do the same. Let's begin by looking at how attachment happens. At any age, as caregivers, we are there to give a secure base so that the people that we're caring for can come back to us as they explore the world and we watch over them. They look to see if we are delighted in what it is that they are doing, if we are confident in their choices, do we approve or disapprove, do we see them, hear them, and listen to them. When they are away from us, they're exploring how to meet and balance their 5 basic needs. William Glasser put forth in his book, Control Theory, that we all have 5 basic psychological needs, and these needs, when balanced, can help us to develop a healthy, complex identity. They are belonging, fun, freedom, power, and achievement, and survival. Belonging, it begins with loving and cooperation. We meet that need through family, friends, and groups. Fun is about humor, excitement, enthusiasm, enjoyment. We meet this through learning and playing. Freedom is where we find an opportunity for choices and movement, spontaneity, and creativity. This is met oftentimes through independence, movement, a variety of things, but most of all, choice. Then we have power and success. And it is not the down and dirty power over anyone. It is about that achieving, that gaining importance and feeling successful. And we meet that through our work, doing our jobs, or projects that we do, or groups that we're with, school. If you're a younger person, your job is the work and the success that you find when you do your school work. And being a caregiver, that's an identity that you have. And oftentimes, if that's going well, we feel achievement. Now, I do want to talk about the next one, which is core and in the center, survival and safety. Those needs, of course, are food, clothing, shelter, security, health, rest. And this need is met through planning, securing, protecting. But there's system inequities largely impacting whether or not everyone's survival and safety needs are met. And so AmazeWorks understands that with COVID-19, it has kind of made things difficult for people. We recognize that the basic needs of safety, security have not been met for many people with marginalized identities, including a large portion of the nation's essential workers, especially within the last year. In addition, the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers has highlighted inequities in our world, our nation, and our state in new and unprecedented ways. It is as if we are talking about 2 pandemics, globally, we are not just talking about COVID-19, we are also talking about the unjust ways in which Black and brown bodies are treated in this country and around the world. With this awareness, we're going to narrow our focus on the locus of control, which we can have control over. And so we're going to recognize and discover in our children and in ourselves how to meet the other needs, the main needs of belonging, fun, freedom, power, and achievement, so that we can help them to manage and balance their needs to create that circle of support that we mentioned in our title. And so to do this, we're going to build up some resiliencies as well. Mel?
All right, so we're gonna practice a little physical movement activity now. We've been sitting here for about 15 minutes, and that's a long time to sit. And so we're going to move our bodies. I'm going to invite you to join me and stand if you are able to. If not, this is something you could try to do in your seat by moving your legs and arms. But I'm going to stand, and hopefully you'll still be able to see me here in my office. And we're going to do an activity where we're going to march forward and we're going to march backward 3 steps, and we're going to do this 10 times. All right.
Or you can tap your toes.
Or you can tap your toes, or you can kick. I'm going to stand up and do it, and you are welcome to join me. So we're going to start with the first one. We'll do step 1, 2, 3, back 2, 3, 2, step forward 2, 3, back 2, 3. And we're going to do that 10 times, starting now. So 1, 2, 3, back 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, back 2, 3. Now we're on 3, 2, 3, back 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, back 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 6, or back 2, 3, 6, 2, 3, back 2, 3, 7, 2, 3, back 2, 3, 8, 2, 3,
Almost
back
there.
2, 3, 9,
You can do
2,
it.
3, back 2, 3, 10, 2, 3, back 2, 3, and you can shake all that out and take your seat again.
Celebration hand.
Yeah, I almost actually tripped on my rug.
So
All
we'll do
sorts
some
of fun.
sign language celebration. It's always good when you get your body moving to make sure that you celebrate your accomplishments. Go ahead, Mel.
So yeah, doing physical activities really helps our brain to refocus and reboot. This is something I used to do as a classroom teacher regularly. My students, sometimes would roll their eyes because they were middle schoolers, like, oh no, you can make us get up again. But it can really help us to feel, to get us unstuck if we're feeling stuck with something, especially if we're in conflict with someone else, and in this case, if we're in conflict, with our children. So doing something like that, even inviting them to do that with you, can really be helpful. All right. Actually, I don't know why I'm out of breath. All I did was march back and forth. But we're going to move on now to talk about the curious brain and how it connects with basic needs. So this is the curious brain, and you can see the 4 basic needs of freedom, fun, belonging, and power and achievement, along with some other words and pictures that help define them in a more visual way. When our basic needs are relatively balanced, we're able to be more curious and open and accepting to others across differences. We have more empathy and understanding for others. And that anti-bias mindset, along with curiosity, can help us stay positive and hopeful, even when safety is not predictable, stable, or secure for us. And I want you to kind of think about that as we do a few questions for reflection. And questions for reflections are things that we do often in AmazeWorks with our curriculum and with our trainings and things like that, because it's important to reflect on our own behaviors and thoughts as we do this work. So for the first question, I want you to think about, what is your child's favorite book? Or what is a book that you share with your children or your child? So think about their favorite book, or just a book that you've shared with them. And when thinking about that book, what basic need or basic needs does that book address? So again, that freedom, fun, belonging, or power achievement. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you can share that with us, we'd love to hear. And you can do that by unmuting yourself and sharing. Otherwise, you can put the response in the chat. You don't have to share the book if you don't want, but at least the need that the book discovers or addresses, sorry.
We have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and she loves books, but she's really into the 5-minute stories right now. And she likes Paw Patrol and Puppy Dog Pals. And so I think fun is probably the basic need for that.
Yes, it is.
And we have in the chat a book that meets fun and belonging.
Good.
Hello. Well, with the books that I shared with my kids, I now share with my grandkids. The one that sticks out more is the Dr. Seuss Green Eggs and Ham.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say the closeness of that book it brings when I read this book is not just the grandchildren that comes in the room when they hear me talking or reading.
Mhm.
It's the older kids that will come in too. So I'm gonna say closeness and fun and yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
freedom. Yeah, that's a great example.
So thank you, Jennifer and Christina and Brittany. Is there anyone else that would like to share?
Okay, I'm going to move us on. So we can see those basic needs being met everywhere. And so we want to help you kind of tie in where that's coming from. The bottom half of the circle of security is when we've been able to recognize the needs that children and youth have the most strength in. So for example, my grandbabies, twins, 4 years old, when I watch them play, discover, and create with each other, I can tell that Olivia already has that dominant need for fun. That's her main need. And her brother Oliver, the twin, on the other hand, he's a power and achievement guy. And then there's their 3-year-old brother, Holden. His dominant need is belonging. And so, very much like Jennifer was saying, that when you read that book, if you have other kids who hear you reading that to your grandbabies, they'll come in because they want the experience of the belonging of hearing that book. And the book in it talks about fun because they giggle about the silly things that happen in that book. And so sometimes there's two needs that can be met at the same time. Well, anyway, when the needs of my grandbabies aren't being met, well, then what happens is they're not in balance and it's communicated immediately. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this scenario. They come home from preschool, and I'm fortunate enough to live in an extended family with all three of them, their mom and dad, my husband, and my 27-year-old daughter as well. And so they enter in from school, or they transition from the two being gone and the younger one just waking up from a nap if their mom is lucky. And Olivia wants to tell me about how much fun she had with all of the things that she was playing with and all of the people she played with, and tells me what Oliver did so that he was having fun in school. And as Oliver comes in, he goes right to that Lego table and he picks up something that he built before he left for school, because I didn't see him in the morning because I was on a Zoom meeting. And he runs up to me, and at the same time, he has to explain to me what he built, what it says, how it works, what the name is. And then Holden wakes up from his nap and he sees Oliver and Olivia standing there in front of me, telling me their stories of fun, and Oliver telling me his stories of what he built and how successful he felt. And then Holden runs in, sits on my lap, pushing those other two out of the way, and begins talking louder than everybody else, which then, of course, he wants to play roughhouse with me. Please play this game with me. Let's roughhouse. And they get so frustrated that they have to compete for one another's attention and for my attention, that their needs are not being met. The tears begin with Holden. Olivia starts to stomp her feet. Oliver screams, "Let me show you my Lego." Last week, we used this slide, that transition model, to talk about how we as adults are handling the world in this example, which many of you can relate to with the toddlers. They have an ending of their school day and they're about ready to start a beginning, and they have to compete with each other. And so instead of getting to the beginning, it becomes like this chaos where they're all talking at the same time. And because they're 4 and 3, it becomes our opportunity to be able to help them to transition with their day into the next phase of their day, because there is something that has ended. They are in that neutral zone of figuring out what's next. And there has to be either calm or chaos, depending on how their needs are being met. And so I give you that frame of reference because in some families, it's about, how our belonging, our power, our fun, and our freedom and our safety needs are met. And something as simple as, coming home from school and everybody talking at one time. But there are others in our world where people are being seen, they're heard, they're listened to with respect. And through that chaos that ensues, they're looking, is equity present? And no matter what the transition is, if it's long or if it's short, long because it's a big life change, or a small transition, like coming home from school, the adult is in charge and gets to teach how to be patient, how to breathe, how to take turns, exhale, and be with. Creating a circle of support is how you create new beginnings and learnings all the time. We can put that top and bottom piece together to complete that circle of support by looking and listening for the needs or the positive curiosity that they have with an anti-bias mindset.
Yeah, and so one of the ways that we can, complete that circle of support is to be mindful of how we're communicating. Whether we are aware of it or not, we are constantly communicating through our body language when we communicate with others. So this nonverbal communication, includes our gestures, our posture, our tone of voice, and our eye contact. And sometimes what comes out of our mouths and what we communicate through our nonverbal communication are two totally different things. We may say one thing, but our body language says something else. And these mixed signals can be really confusing, especially for children. If we're, thinking about something else, if we're planning what we're going to say next, checking our phone, or, our mind is on another, thing from the day, we are certain to miss the nonverbal cues that reveal some of those needs that our children are needing help with, and they're out of balance. And so we might not necessarily always fully understand the subtleties of what's being communicated. But when our nonverbal communication matches what we were saying, it helps build that trust and shows that we are really listening. And this helps create belonging and fill a child's success needs. And it also helps nurture their freedom. So we want to make sure that we're creating that circle of security, so we can provide children with a secure base for them to expand their freedom and power. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're communicating to them that we can continue to be that safe haven in order to support them and acknowledge their success. And the balance between these can shift depending on the child's needs. But that effective, clear, nonverbal communication is really a key component in maintaining this circle of security. So it's really important for us to be fully present in order to improve our nonverbal communication with our children. And we can do this by learning how to manage our stress and continuing to develop our emotional awareness. And if we continue practicing those resilience activities and building our own resilience, it will help us, with that nonverbal communication, and then, help us better identify their needs. So another activity we can try, in order to do this and practice these skills, is to let your mind wander. And so if you are sitting near a window, I'm going to ask you to look out that window. And if you're not sitting near a window, you can gaze at the screen and picture maybe that. Imagine yourself looking out the window that's on the screen right now. But as you look out the window or look at the window that's on the screen, focus your thoughts on what you see outside and try to just find a moment of calm with what you see. And take several deep, full breaths. This might feel like a waste of time and you might wonder what the purpose is, but that's actually exactly why you should try it. Because when we step back and we take moments away from always trying to be purposeful or productive, we are able to see things from other perspectives more easily. And again, it creates that creative curiosity and openness. And it can relieve some of the pressures that we feel. So if we take moments of silence for 1 to 3 minutes at a time, it can also help us focus and become better listeners.
Yeah, most definitely. When your children and youth are able to problem solve, activities like this is really helpful for them. And they're able to, during times of stress and chaos, like Mel was talking about, refocus their brain so that they are able to problem solve. Because even though they know how to solve problems on their own, if they're not breathing, we can get stuck in our brains and we're not able to problem solve on our own. So with guidance or on their own, if kids believe that the family beliefs of being kind, responsible, respectful, and safe are their beliefs, when youth have developed their beliefs and have thoughts about the kind of person that they want to be, then they're able to be in a place where you can teach those 5 basic needs to them, and they can name for you, you know, I want to tell you about my fun. That's really about belonging. They want to talk about fun, but they want to be with you, right? Or if they're reading a book that mirrors something that's happening out in the world, it's like they want to be able to show you that they know and they understand something. So you can ask kids, where are you at? And if they've made a mistake, it gives them an opportunity to have a framework on how they can solve their problems or negotiate with you how to learn how to fix their problems. So for example, one of the things that you can do to help your kids get back on track, instead of saying, stop hitting your brother or stop hitting your sister, there's these things called 30-second interventions. And the first one is what you are doing okay now? And the next one is, what is your job supposed to be now? When will you be able to start? So for example, if you are wanting for kids to put their shoes on so that you all can go out for a walk and they're not putting their shoes on, hey, I've let you know what we're doing. When are you going to be ready to start so that we can go outside for a walk? And it's just a way of prompting without having to say over and over again, get your shoes on, get your shoes on. It looks like you have a problem. How can I help you solve it? Is another thing that you can say if they're struggling or if they're arguing with each other. You can say, do you want to figure out a better way? I can help you if you need. And the last one that they say is, what you're doing right now helping or hurting our transition? Or is what you're doing right now helping or hurting when it comes to being kind to each other. These 30-second questions, just say them really quick, is just another way you give a direction. They know what they need to do. And it's a prompt of a question so that they're self-correcting instead of us correcting them all the time. It's one of their ways that they get to feel successful because it's not a debate or an argument. It's just a prompt. And then they know what to do next. So when do you think these 30-second interventions would be of use to you? Or what situation might they be in? I just want to take a minute or two to just explore that with y'all. Anyone have thoughts on when you could use those interventions? You can tell us what color it is.
Hello. I'm a grandmother of 4, in whom they all live with me.
Yep.
At times I struggle in all these areas, and it does seem like I'm like a broken record or a disc stuck on one couple of words, like
Yep.
what you're just saying, put your shoes on, and I'm gonna try and practice this, and I'm gonna also teach my daughter how to talk to these kids like that, because there are some times where I don't necessarily holler at them. I just ignore because I'm like up to here with the stress level. And so I'm calming myself down, and then I'm hearing the parents, and I'm just like, okay, this is not okay. And then when I go down there and I ask those kids, like, do you need help with something? They just look at me like I'm really, really like, what did you just ask me? You're not mad?
Yep.
That's what I get from my 5-year-old granddaughter. She just turns around, I need help. I said, I just asked you if you need help. Well, what can I help you with? Or are you ready to be helped? And
Yeah.
she'd be like, and she would go storming away from me. And it's just like, what did I just say?
Yep.
I'm going to practice more with these. So yeah, it's going
And
to help. I
yeah,
really do think.
Yeah, it takes some time and it takes some patience, but you're kind of already there, Jennifer. And some of the ways that you're describing, as parents, we've all experienced that, where we get that stress level and we feel our voice raising a little bit. And so a way of framing it in a different way, and if we do it enough, they get used to it. And it's kind of like you ask the question and then you can narrate what's next, or they can narrate what's next. Anyone else have a suggestion of one that they think they've used or they could start using?
I have some ideas.
Yeah.
This is Melissa, and I work at Adventure Club, which is part of Robbinsdale area schools. And one of the things I've learned over the years is one of the first things I wanted to share is doing a clapping pattern. I'll do the whole, and then they follow. And I also will start singing in a really low voice.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to, get them to, line up, I'll be like, line up now, it's time to go to breakfast. And I'll sing it softly so that they have to stop talking in order to pay attention to what I'm saying. And then the third thing I wanted to share was, we also do the raising of the hand, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the 5 fingers.
Yep.
But depending on a person's ability, that may not be possible, right? So of course we're being inclusive when we are capturing people's attention through the different ways of them responding, whether it's visual, auditory, or kinesthetically. So yes, I'm done speaking, but those are some of the things that I've used.
Yes, those are wonderful suggestions. One last comment, if someone has one of those that they'd like to use. Yes.
I have a example with my daughter who she's really hard on herself and comes out as frustration. And so I'm liking these suggestions to help me frame it better, because what I find out is when she falls apart, my frustration level rises real easily. And so then I'm not as supportive as I want to be in that circumstance, because she's already frustrated and I want to relieve it. And so I think some of these prompts could help me, like acknowledging she has a problem, like the hot pink one. And then I think Jennifer said something that I liked as well. It says, how can I help you? But I think, Jennifer, you said something about like, let me know when you're ready for help, like kind of giving her that space if she needs to be upset and not deny those feelings.
Yeah.
But not try to get caught up in it either, because then I'm not really a good resource to support her. So I think I could combine some of it. I like how Jennifer said, when you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very intuitive. I'm glad that these are helpful for you, and I appreciate the extra insights that you've shared. And so, like I said before, but if you didn't hear it, we will make this slide deck and present recording available on our website. And so you'll be able to then, play it and stop it and then take notes at that time. So we're going to move on. And I hope that they're helpful for you. We're going to kind of look at the next piece of that is if you have to look into a situation where you are needing to enforce a rule that's at home. No snacks before bedtime. I don't know what the rules might be. But oftentimes your beliefs at home have something to do where you've shared them or you've come up with them together, where you want to be kind to each other or respectful. You want to be safe with each other or hands and feet to yourself, or you want to be responsible. So we do our job or we do our chores, or I do my job as the mom or as the grandma, you do your job as the kid, which is what's your job? And they might say, I follow directions, or they might say, I'm a helper. And so those are the belief pieces. And if they've made a mistake, like, for example, I know that the kids are trying to, at 4, learn to take their dishes and empty them in the garbage and then put them in the sink. And so one of them has a hard time with that. And so a way that their mom could respond would be to say, well, wait a second, what do we believe at home about taking care of our dishes? And they say, well, I gotta put them in the sink. Well, do you believe that that's a good thing to do? Well, I don't want to, might be what they say. If they say yes, then you can say, if you believe it, do you want to fix it? And oftentimes, yep, it's just that gentle prompt. And if you do fix it, what does that say about you as a person? I'm a helper, And so, yep, there's the positive way that can go. And then sometimes it doesn't work with little nippers. Sometimes you got to wait until they get to be about 8. And 8-year-olds and up know right from wrong. And they also, they do have their beliefs kind of set. And they know that being a helper is something that's important. And so that's a great way when kids are a little bit older that you've practiced it, that you learn it, and maybe you role play with the other person in the house so that they have an opportunity to be able to demonstrate it, so mom and mom could demonstrate what that might look like, because that's the way then they could, oh, you forgot to take your dishes to the sink. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to fix that. That's what we usually do, is just direct what could be done. But what we're saying is say, what is it that we believe we need to do when it's after supper time? Oh, I forgot to put my dishes in the sink. Do you believe that we should do that? Oh yeah, I want to be a helper. So you have people demonstrating it first for the little nippers. And when they see that happening, then it becomes what they do as well. So I'm going to give you another example. But before I do, we're going to take a quick poll, because I want to just kind of see where you're at with some of these things that we've discussed. Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, so Marcella's going to share a poll for you, because for some reason I'm not able to share the poll. So hopefully you can see a poll pop up. It's going to be a one question about, ask you to think about how easy or hard is it to ask those questions. So those questions that Robin just talked about. So how easy is it for you to ask the questions to help develop that internal motivation. So take a moment to take the poll. And I don't even see the poll, so hopefully
It's there. I
Robin
see
and
it.
Marcella are able to see it.
Yeah, it's it. What do you believe? Do you believe it? If you believe it, do you want to fix it? What need are you missing right now? If you fix it, what does it say about you as a person? Marcella, you can tell us when we've got, 95% done, and then share the results with us.
Was it the poll about which events have influenced your life?
Oh,
Nope.
Okay.
oh, we got the wrong poll.
Oh,
Oops.
Oh, I think that was our poll from last week.
I didn't even notice.
Well, what we were going to ask is what's difficult for you? Do you think that what we've just shared with you is fairly easy and it could come naturally for you? Or here we go, there it is. How
that
easy
was
it for you to ask the
that was-
questions to develop internal motivation with your kids and the people that you care for? Just check, is it fairly easy? It comes naturally to you? Somewhat easy, I still need to be extra mindful of what I'm saying. A little bit difficult, I'm going to need more practice. I'm going to struggle with this. This is a growth area for me.
Sorry about that.
And the growth area is good because that's the name of this, beginnings and growth. How can we look at some new beginnings and new ways of doing things and find a way to grow through that? All right, Marcella, you let me know when we're done.
Okay, we're almost there.
Good, good, good. So I have a couple of examples for you. Once we have the results of the poll, that might also illustrate for you where we go next. There we go. Oh, this is good. I'm hoping that we're providing some new information for you so that this gives you an opportunity to practice and try some new things. So as you can see there, Mel, you can't, so I'll read it to you. It's not going to be a struggle for anybody. So I love that optimism. That's great. A little difficult. I'm going to need some practice. Is at about 44%. It's going to be somewhat easy, but I still need extra mindfulness in what I'm saying is 44%, and 11% say fairly easy. It comes naturally for me. So that's good. I'm glad we're kind of meeting you where you need to be. So listen to this scenario and let's figure out what the next steps might be. Off of what I hear in the poll, my husband Dan and I were foster parents for 20 years. Most teen sibling groups who would be with us until they graduated from high school. And so it was like a 3 to 5 year relationship and then some, because we still are in contact with lots of the kids. And this was most useful. These were the most useful questions for us with our teens, but also with our knee nippers as well. Dan would lovingly refer to the little ones as knee nippers and the older ones, who I love working with, the rebels without a clue. Dan was an elementary school teacher. I was a middle school teacher. And one of the most important things that we discovered that the kids needed to be taught was when they were fighting over something and arguing, maybe it was a game system or playing with that favorite dinosaur figurine. We would have to teach the kids how to take a turn, because brain development actually, it doesn't make it easy for kids until they get to be about 9 or 10. And even by then, if they haven't practiced and we haven't guided it and then modeled it, they don't know how to ask for a turn. And so one of the things that we found when kids were arguing over something was to be able to explain to them, you know what, we got to use our words. If you're fighting over that dinosaur figurine, we believe in this house that we share. So the way that we share is we try and create some equal time. So here's a timer. Anytime you want to play with something that someone else is playing with, you can just ask, when can I have a turn? Now they might say no. A lot of times they do say no. but you can say, we believe in sharing. Do you want me to set the timer for 5 minutes for me to have a turn? Or could I have a turn in 3 minutes? If they're older and it's a game station thing, one of those games that they play, then, you know, it's more like you're going to have a turn in 15 minutes or you can have a turn in 30 minutes, right? But the reality is that eventually the kids can say, well, we believe in sharing. So here's your choice. Here's your freedom. And it's funny, a lot of times they'll say that end one, you can set the timer for 30 minutes and then have a turn. Or they can say, you can set that timer for 5 minutes, but really what they wanted was that control. And then after about 2 or 3 minutes, it's like, here, you can have a turn now. And it's amazing how it works. That's just another example of how you're helping them meet their own needs for having freedom and choice, but also feeling a bit successful in being able to set a boundary, have autonomy, but yet still have that opportunity to have belonging with each other by actually giving each other a turn by using their words. So I'm going to share with you just one other slide. I'll read it to you. But then we're going to move on to a couple of other things. But so what our kids experienced in some of the scenarios that I've explained to you is that there's this bad mood that can happen when it comes to sharing or fighting with each other or arguing with each other or things, their needs not being met. And so we always talked about our feelings. Our kids were able to identify their feelings. I did this with my students in middle school and in high school too, because that's the level I taught, where we did feelings identifications. And then we talked about a bad mood does not have to last forever. And that's a good one for adults to realize too. I can recognize when my mood is helping me in my learning or what I need to get done or hindering me. For the most part, my mood is my choice and my actions impact other people's moods. And so it's important as a family to be able to be aware of how emotions and feelings can get in the way of our communication with each other. Go ahead, Marcella, you can click it to the next one. I'm going to read the purple slide. So when there is a difficulty or a conflict, you can go into that. What do we believe? Do you believe it? If you believe it, do you want to fix it? What do you need? If you fix it, what does it say about who you are as a person? And if they say no, and if they're not able to do this whole thing quick and easy, and that's never the case, right? Then you go back to feelings identification and looking at the basic needs and helping them discover, but I want some fun right now. I understand that. So you're feeling what? I'm mad. How does that help us? Well, I don't know. You know, and so you can see how meeting their need and helping them understand the needs, talking about your feelings and emotions is what's going to be that sweet sauce to be able to ask them to fix it themselves by you prompting with questions instead of always telling them how to fix it, what to do. Go here, go there, do this, do that kind of thing. So I want to just kind of give us a little break. That was a lot of stuff. So, Mel?
All right, I'm gonna apologize now if you hear my dog barking, but he's upstairs barking.
That's okay.
It's just how it's gonna be. Working from home. Yeah, we're gonna take a little break to, there's a lot of information, right? And that can be fatiguing, especially when we're, you know, virtually like this and we can't be together in person. So here's a little activity to help us refocus our attention. If you are able to, I'm going to try snapping your fingers on alternating hands as you count to 50. If this is something that's difficult for you, you could slap your hands on your knees or find another way to do it. But just do it to yourself and do it as quickly as you can using alternating fingers and count to 50. So go.
You're almost there. Keep going. Keep going. Awesome.
I love
Okay.
it. Thank you. So when we exercise the brain in this way, it can help us refocus to tackle challenges by helping us kind of chunk them into one thing at a time. And so feel free to practice that one anytime. Robin makes us practice that sometimes in meetings, and he'll do this.
Yep, you got to have that interrupt so you can do a reboot. And it actually helps to reflect then, what have I heard so far? And what are my learnings? And give you a little extra stamina for a few more helpful hints. We experience the real world through our perceptions. And for the image of the quality world, you know, our hopes, our dreams, our healthy complex identity, having that respect across differences that we've talked about, being able to navigate equity by using anti-bias education. When your perceived world matches your quality world and is close to matching the real world, well, that's when we're feeling happy and our needs are met, and we're able to be with and have a little less stress if we can. It helps us to manage new beginnings so that we can also communicate in a healthy way for ourselves and for those for whom we care for, and create that circle of support with. We feel like we're on the right path for a continued self-reflection, improvement, and growth. And when it comes to anti-bias education, I hope we're able to then have that little more capacity to like be aware of the equity that's needed in our world right now, and be aware of how can I start being responsive, taking action with empathy when it comes to being aware of creating some equity for all by being able to name bias, prejudice, and stereotypes, having that respect across differences, having a healthy complex identity for myself, windows and mirrors, respecting it in other people. Now, when the real world and our perceived world are far apart from each other, those are times when we struggle. Because for our quality world, when it feels really small, we act to fulfill our needs, and we want to be able to create a balance and to grow, as well as teach our children to have the skills to navigate with resilience. And so I just want to remind you that this is a hard path, right? And we don't always get that full circle thing, especially when our world is dealing with like 2 pandemics. But that perceived world can get a little bit bigger, and our quality world can grow a little bit stronger when we meet our needs, both for ourselves and with each other. And that's what helps us when teaching our kids how they can navigate things with resiliency.
All right, we're going to do another reflection. So I'm going to ask you to join me in some breathing and stretching first. So because if we can take time to pause, breathe, and reflect before we respond, that can also be really helpful in our interactions. So take a minute to just breathe deeply and stretch upwards as high as you can. And now stretch over to the left as far as you can.
Your left, my right.
Or your other left, whatever left you want. When your other left, your right. And continue breathing. And I'm going to try to give you a full minute to actually think about the questions that I'm asking. You don't need to respond within the chat or anything. This is just for your own silent reflection. So think about, how are you meeting your needs to make your quality world and your perceived world match more? And then how can you take care of yourself and regulate yourself better?
Well, how I get my needs met or make my quality world perceived more the much of making a match. I go with what I've learned being in the mental health world, the community of having that knowledge just knowing that I could take care of myself and regulate my emotions into validating and being much more aware of my emotional regulation skills to preserve my world, to have a quality world, which which some people in the community will not understand, because I utilize this a lot, especially into regulating, making myself more better. I The way I feel is if I can't help myself or take care or regulate what I'm navigating up in here in my mind or in my outer, I call it my outer limits within my space,
Nice.
then I won't be able to do for others
Mhm.
mentally and physically if I'm not well regulated into my emotional regulation of my wise mind and my outer mind.
Mhm.
So that's how I do it. So I mean that's how I take care of myself mentally
Yeah.
and physically.
That's awesome, Jennifer. That really well put. I'm really glad you shared that.
Yeah, thank you. And so,
You're
you know,
welcome.
yeah. So thinking about that, you know, how we can be, we can foster that mindset for ourselves and um, be resilient. There are those activities that you can do, you know, anytime. We talked about, that's what we were talking about with those resilience activities of, you know, do even the snapping or the marching back and forth or looking out the window. You know, they may seem like silly little things, but it can really help to regulate ourselves, right? And so, you know, you can do those activities anytime. And if we want to foster that positive mindset and build our resilience, you know, it's exactly that, to help shift our thinking. And so feel free to use those suggestions, you know, for yourself or with your children, because the benefit really is that positive psychological change and as a result to adversity. And that helps us meet those new beginnings with growth.
And positivity.
And positivity, as this little graphic is showing us right now. And so, you know, we can help our children and youth make good choices by helping them develop that internal motivation, being mindful about what they need. We talked about needs today, and by modifying our own behavior as adults so that we can, you know, meet those needs for our children. And so hopefully that was helpful for you today. And that brings us to our 4:30 time. And we want to leave the last little bit of time here open for questions.
And dialogue.
And dialogue. And there was a great question in the chat that I want to make sure we address. And if you have other questions, you can, you know, unmute yourself and ask or put them in the chat. But the question, I think it was Christina that asked about mindfulness resources for educators, which, you know, mindfulness resources for educators and parents and caregivers are, you know, we can interchange them and use them in all aspects of our lives. And so that was our first question that was in the chat earlier. I just wanted to make sure that we got to it.
So there's a couple of really great resources, and I think what I'll do is I will attach a list. I believe it has 5 different websites that you can go to that we provided those resources in June or the end of May, right at the beginning of lockdown and everything. And I'll find that again and I'll attach it to the end of this presentation if I can. If not, I'll let you know where we can find them. Here's one that I can off the top of my head. If you go to Ramsey County Children's Mental Health and you go to the Calm Room, it's a tab. They have the most amazing resource. It's like 50 different things that helps you to meditate, to be calm. There's things for sound, there's things for movement, there's things that just helps you to breathe, fun activities you can do with your kids, things to do for yourself, and all of the activities that we shared here with you for you to take care of you and have some peace and to shift and to create that emotional resiliency and social resiliency and physical resiliency. And what am I missing? One of them. You can do those with your kids as well. They're great activities, teaching them how to breathe 3 breaths in, 3 breaths out, moving forward, moving back, and then breathing and calming and settling. Those are all great things that you can do. Mel, you keep going, and I'm going to see if I can put those resources in the chat real quick.
Hey, I just did it.
Oh, you're so good.
I actually thought of that same resource when the question was asked earlier, and I had it ready to go. So
Yay.
yeah. And then it looks like Brittany put another one in the chat, like Conscious Discipline
Oh,
website.
yes.
Yeah, so feel free to share those resources. And there are lots of them. There's a lot out there for educators now, and some really good books too. And I'm not sure, actually, Robin, if those resources that we shared are still on our resource hub on our website.
I'm going to look it up right now. I'm going to try and attach it to this so that when we're done recording, it'll be captured at the end. Managing Emotional Mayhem. Looks like 5 steps to self-regulation. Ooh, that looks good. Oh, it's a book.
Yeah, that's a conscious discipline. And on their website, it's only like $23. On Amazon, it's over $40. So that's one case where it's actually cheaper. I know there's not many cases on that, but this is awesome. Like I said, anything with conscious discipline, and they have a lot of free trainings. If you create an account, you get access to tons more. You can also pay for a membership too, though, but
Yeah, I would agree. I've presented at conferences where they have presented as well. And I love when I'm not presenting to attend theirs because I always learn little new things, and they're really great people. Yeah. Conscious Discipline. Any other questions about anything we've discussed, or if there were questions for reflection that you want to comment on and we didn't have quite enough time to get anybody in before we moved on?
Well, if not, I can always, we can
There's
share
a
our screen
question in
again.
the chat.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, from Jen.
Jen says, what's a good way to start implementing some of these ideas? Picking a few at a time to practice. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to make a bunch of change at a time. Yeah, change at a time.
You know,
Yeah, I would pick a couple and go for it.
So, you know, we talked about doing the 50, claps. It's like small chunking steps. And so those 30-second interventions, I would write each one of them on a note card and keep a stack maybe in the kitchen, or keep another stack somewhere else where everybody kind of meets. And then that way you can kind of look when something's happening. And if you don't have it to memory yet, you can just like have that little note card that's sitting next to the potted cactus, and you can kind of look at it a little bit and just remind yourself. That's just a little way that you can set yourself up for success by being able to take the information and just do a little bit at a time. And then when it comes to some of those longer questions, maybe that's retyping them, printing them out, reading them out loud with anybody who helps you to be a caregiver, and just reading it, writing it, and saying out loud and then hearing it is a great way to commit something to memory. And so you can just kind of, like I said, chunk it out. Take maybe the first thing that I talked about, which is a little bit easier, which is 2 questions. And then maybe taking that next thing and just doing it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, one thing that I did when I was a classroom teacher, I had a jar for the front of my classroom, And I had those wide popsicle sticks, you know, the really wide ones that
Oh, yeah.
they're maybe like, I don't know, half an inch or a little, not the skinny ones, but the wide ones. So I could write on them with a fine point Sharpie marker. And I would write down on those sticks, like the snapping exercise or something like that, just so I could have a mental reminder. And if I needed one in the middle of class, I would just go over to my jar and I'd pull one out, or I'd ask a student to do it. Like, I think we need a break. Let's pick one of these. And so they would pull one out and we'd do it. And after a while, they kind of knew all the ones I had, you know, and so I'd be like, okay, we'll do this one. And then they would suggest different ones that we could add. So, but you know, that's something I did as a classroom teacher, but you could do that with your children at home too. You don't have that resource so that they're available for you.
I was thinking how, like when I used to be in the classroom as well, and I'm coaching teachers now, sometimes I would suggest practicing it when things aren't like mayhem or rising, but the practice of like, for even when the classroom is calm or things are going well, the idea of having these tools, so then people can pull from those on their own individually or in small groups when they're needing it. So it's almost like teaching the tool before the actions of concern or where you're feeling like you might need to interject, but just an idea.
Good
Yeah.
idea.
That's a great one. Thank you.
Okay. So I have now posted to the end of this. And so Marcella, if you could go to that slide 36 and share your screen so everyone can see. The slide 37 is a yellow slide that talks about ways to self-regulate and find calm. And so that gives you a couple of extra other things that you can do. Marcella, are you sharing your screen yet?
1 second.
Working on it.
Okay, working on it. So that first yellow one gives you additional things like what we did here. And she'll show you when she gets to it. The one that's after that is a blue one, and the blue one says self-care for me. Yeah, so there's the yellow one, ways to self-regulate and find calm. Once again, you can take it, write them on popsicle sticks. You could do it on index cards. You could put it on a little piece of tape, and you put a piece of tape with one on your wrist for the morning, and then you take the tape off at lunch and you put another piece of tape on, and that's the one that you're going to use in the afternoon. Lots of different ways you could do it. And then go ahead, switch to slide 38. Self-care for me is the resources that I was talking about that we had found right at the beginning of the pandemic, where you can quote and art and Instagram. You can click on, and the nap ministry, that's an awesome one. Sleep is so rejuvenating. But all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullet points, where when you look at the video, you can pause it and then you can type it into the search, and it'll come right back up for you. As a matter of fact, if you want a copy of the slide deck, I think go ahead and put your name in the chat that says, yep, want a copy, and we'll take a look at that, and we will send it to you so that way you can just click on it. I just ask that you be respectful of our intellectual property and putting this together, and not share your slides with other people. But if you think that there are other people who would really enjoy and get benefit out of this workshop, they can contact us, check it out on our website, or you could encourage them to come next week to the final one, because we're going to talk a little bit more about the same kind of stuff. Transitions, new beginnings, and how do you create and make connections, especially when the road is a little rough. And so you got to look at where's that roughness and chaos and conflict coming from, and how can we collapse the conflict to be able to create connections and respect and responsiveness and empathy with each other. Go ahead, Mel.
All right. Yeah. So thank you for putting your things in the chat if you would like a copy. It looks like most people would like a copy of it. So, and we can make sure to send that out. I'll be sending out a little evaluation to all of you after today as well, so I can attach it at the same time. But we have to put in our little plug to follow us on social media and sign up for our monthly e-newsletter. Marcella's going to put a link in the chat for the newsletter. It looks like she's already done that, which is great. If you don't have access to that newsletter yet, please sign up. We give free lessons and resources and
Interview authors.
and things like that every single month. And we also have a great resource hub on our website. Currently, we have posted resources to help support children during the Derek Chauvin trial, which is happening here in Minnesota. And we want to make sure we just thank you for sharing your time with us today. It was great to have this time, and you were a great audience as far as like offering suggestions and participation. We love an interactive audience, so thank you so much for that. And we hope to see you at our final webinar, which is next week, Thursday, same time, same place. And until then, be well, stay safe, and we will stay on for a couple more minutes in case anyone has any questions. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Yep. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, Jennifer. Yep. Bye, Mary.
See ya. Good night.
Yep.
Nice
Bye.
seeing you and listening to you guys.
Yep.
Miss you too.
Bye.
Bye, Deborah.
I'm sorry that end was so clunky.
No, it wasn't clunky
I was like,
at all.
I want to leave the time, but I don't want to go into that. I feel like once you
Let's
do
turn
the, like,
the
follow us on
let's turn the recording off.
Oh yeah, I'll stop.